possible. At the same time, Boeing was moving in another direction, upward. It had designed and built Project 299, the prototype for the B-17 Flying Fortress, using the idea of 4 engines and a smaller fuselage than the XB-15 in order to improve performance. The B-17's wings and tail assembly were given a pressurized cigar-shaped fuselage to produce the 4-engine Stratoliner. A supercharger provided oxygen for high-altitude engine performance and fed pressurized air to the cabin. It was the first pressurized airliner to enter service, and the airlines ordered 10 Stratoliners. The plane first flew on December 31, 1938, and created great excitement with its ability to fly at 26,000 feet and carry 33 passengers. But a plane that seemed destined for greatness ran into trouble. A bad crash of Stratoliner number 1 led to the addition of a dorsal fin to improve stability, and the airlines were a bit wary of the new plane. Despite the prospects for the Stratoliner, by 1939, nearly 90% of worldwide passenger traffic was handled by DC-3s. As Boeing and Douglas battled in the commercial world, events in Europe changed their focus from planes of peace to planes of war. The Second World War unleashed a both terrifying and wondrous growth in technology. Under the pressures of war, the world of aviation would change forever. Few outside of Germany realized just how far German engineers had pushed the envelope of aviation technology. Merely a week before their invasion of Poland, Germany gave the world the first glimpse of aviation's future. Ernst Haenkel's HE-178, the world's first jet, made its initial flight in late August of 1939. Two years later, the Germans tested another jet, the HE-280, an exceptional aircraft which would have seen active service had political disfavor not fallen upon Ernst Haenkel. The Germans were not the only ones to see that the jet was the future. In Britain, Frank Whittle had been experimenting with jet engines for several years. Although Britain did manage to get a few jets into service, the Germans were the undisputed leaders and proved it with their legendary Messerschmitt Me-262. The Me-262 demonstrated the efficiency of merging jet engines with swept wings, a combination which would ultimately bring us the 777. The dawn of the Cold War came immediately upon the heels of Allied victory, and while airplane manufacturers looked back to the commercial world, the military needs could not be ignored. The formation of the Strategic Air Command in 1946 represented the American commitment to a strategy of retaliatory long-range strategic bombardment. Throughout the war, the Boeing Company had supplied the American forces with some of the most famous bombers of all time, the B-17 and B-29. This success made them a natural choice to develop a new bomber.
They had begun to see that in the post-war world, they needed a jet bomber. The jet bomber took advantage of the newly available German technology and American technology which had surfaced by the end of the war, which involved swept wings and jet engines. Their first attempt in this area was a magnificent success. For a $13 million contract, they produced the XB-47. And this was a 6-jet swept-wing bomber, absolutely revolutionary. It was fast, had long range because of that in-flight refueling capability, and nobody else in the world had anything like it. It was a decade ahead of any other country. Well, Boeing looked at that and said, well, how can we convert it to a commercial airliner?
Boeing had not been totally absent from the commercial world. Between 1947 and 1952, they had built 50 Model 377 Stratocruisers. The Stratocruiser was the ultimate in luxury travel, in an era in which only the very wealthy could afford to fly. Its most famous feature was the spiral staircase, which connected the cabin with a lower deck lounge, where passengers could stretch their legs and enjoy a change of scenery. There was also a ladies' lounge, a convenient facility for keeping up in flight appearances. Boeing's main competitors at the time, like this Lockheed Constellation, were essentially pre-war designs. Other planes, like this British Hermes, were adequate for the transoceanic routes. But air travel had not boomed like many had thought. The high cost prevented most people from flying. In 1952, the British Comet seemed poised to lead the way to an era of jet travel. But two crashes grounded the Comet fleet and left airlines and passengers wary of the jet. But the success of the B-47 had convinced Boeing that large jets could be safe and efficient. Their expertise prompted them to build an even bigger and more powerful jet bomber, the B-52. With both the B-47 and B-52, the standard bearers for the post-war bomber, Boeing gambled that they could use this new technology to change the world of commercial aviation.
This was a tremendous gamble. The airlines were well served at the time with Douglas DC-7s, Lockheed Constellations, and the jet was going to be expensive, going to be terribly risky.
Under a veil of secrecy, Boeing invested $16 million of its own money into a stunning new airplane, the Dash 80. This legendary airplane served as a dual prototype for a military tanker and commercial jet transport, introduced as the Boeing 707. With a familiar combination of jet engines and swept wings, the design of the 707 remains the basic standard for virtually all commercial jets. From its introduction in October of 1958, the 707 sparked a revolution in jet travel, which has dramatically changed the world. Although international travel was still expensive, the 707 had brought this dream one step closer to the common man. The comfort and speed of commercial jets made flying a much more pleasant experience, and Boeing knew that there would be a need for much larger jets to accommodate growing demand. But in the early 60s, much of the company's energy was focused on a military contract to build the massive jet transport, the C-5A. In August of 1965, they lost the contract to rival Lockheed, an event which would bring the world the first jumbo jet.
If we had won that contract, it would have absorbed a great deal of our energy, and we probably would not have gone forward with the 747 at that time, then later. However, the fact that we lost it, and that released a fair amount of energy and resources to do something else,